The mop squeaked once when I pulled it back from the far wall. That stubborn tile always does that on the 12th floor. But that night, it might have saved me. I'd just started the far wing by the conference rooms. A little after 1 in the morning, the building should have been silent. No one in a suit is supposed to be breathing office air that late. But I heard voices, low, tight, not friendly, coming from the big glass room at the corner. Russell Jackson's voice came first, sharp like he didn't care who he cut. Sextant slips 1 more week and the Fremont contract walks. That's $150 million gone. I kept mopping like usual, head down, small circles. Don't look, don't stop. Quick note, before listening, drop your city or country in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from. Okay, back to the story. Another voice, female, calm but firm. Dad, we can't sell a story that isn't true. The curves don't make sense. Somebody's forcing a straight line through bent wood. Irene, his daughter. I'd seen her maybe twice in elevators. Neat posture, clear shoes, no wasted movements. Then Preston Griffin's voice came in, smooth and too pleased. Our approach is advanced. Investors love fancy. We'll stack more steps and make it look stable. She didn't flinch. It's fragile. We keep hiding drift with tricks. The error spikes after midnight loads. Russell again, louder. We've burned 9 months and 8 vendors. I don't care about tricks. I care about the field test on the 19th. That hit me. It was the 6th tonight. 13 days left. Preston again. Let me handle the narrative at the all hands tomorrow. No one out there is going to hear about drift. Irene. Narrative won't stop a conveyor jamming in South San Francisco. Fix the cause. Russell's breath hit the glass. I could see the fog on the window from where I stood. We have until the 19th. Preston, almost laughing. I'll make it beautiful. I kept moving. My cart's wheels stuck a little when I turned toward the end of the corridor. I didn't exist. That's my talent. I'm just part of the floor, part of the shadows and vents. I know every line in this building, but that straight line through bent wood, stuck in my brain like a splinter. I see patterns. I can't help it. Can't read sarcasm, but if something loops crooked and you pretend it's a line, I know. You don't have to explain it twice. And that night, in the war room with all their panic, they left the board alive. I saw it. Laptop open, whiteboard messy with dry markers and smeared math, figures that bent in ways no straight line ever should. I kept my gloves on, finished my run like usual, and set the cart back by the closet. I washed my hands twice, first with soap, then sanitizer. I always do. I told myself, not your job, don't get curious, don't get clever. Then I stood there like a statue, listening to my heartbeat and their footsteps walk off toward the elevator. I wasn't supposed to hear any of it. I definitely wasn't supposed to know what it meant. But I did. And I didn't sleep that morning. Around 2:30 in the morning, I swiped my badge, opened the war room door, and pulled it shut behind me until it clicked. The lights were low, half the panels off, but the whiteboard lit up just enough from the glow of the laptop still running near the edge of the table. The hallway behind me was empty. I turned to the board. Arrows were everywhere. Angles too sharp to be real. Numbers stacked in clusters like someone was racing time, not solving a system. I don't like clutter. I don't like guesswork. And I hate crooked math. The part that stopped me was about 1/3 of the way down, where 3 bold lines tried to flatten something that didn't want to be flat, like forcing a lid onto a warped container and wondering why it leaks. I felt the same tension I get when I see a kid's swing hung crooked. Doesn't matter if it still swings, it pulls wrong, and someone's going to fall. I stepped closer, close enough to smell expo marker and old dry erase. My hand twitched. I shouldn't have touched it, but I did. I wiped just a corner. Small patch. Then I drew what should have been there from the beginning. A curb. Just like a curb on a street. You don't floor a delivery truck around a corner with no edge. You put a boundary, a hard limit. Then you push right up to it, but not past it. No fancy notation. Just one red line. A stop where the model had been pretending it could coast forever. My hands were sweating through the gloves. Not just nerves. Focus. I wasn't scared. I was awake. My brain does this thing when something clicks. It locks into a rhythm like a rail groove. All I could see was how wrong it had been, and how easy it was to stop the system from chewing itself to pieces. I took out my phone and snapped 2 pictures, before and after. It's habit. I do the same with stains, just in case someone thinks I missed a spot. Timestamp saved automatically. I put the phone back, rolled the mop along the lines like nothing happened, and backed out of the room as the last marker smell faded. There was a security camera above the door. I knew that. I looked down, turned left toward the kitchen, and didn't stop walking. A few minutes later, I was filling my thermos. Steam rose off the stainless steel sink. My gloves were off now, my fingers sticky from sweat and marker ink I'd somehow smudged onto my palm. I washed them twice, then once more without soap. That third rinse always settles me. I walked back to the janitor's closet, flipped the light off with my elbow, and pulled the door shut behind me. I sat on the stool by the shelf and opened my notebook. I noted the time in my notebook. Then under it, curved, not straight. I underlined it once, then again. Then I added, warehouse test? With a question mark, I circled hard enough to dent the page behind it. I didn't know what they were building in that system. Not fully. I'd seen the name sextant on shipment labels, overheard engineers arguing about stability zones near the elevators. I'd caught glimpses of testing dashboards while emptying office bins. But I knew enough to know that curve meant stress, and that stress, unaccounted for, always breaks something. I was out the door before dawn. Dawn was still hiding behind the hills, but the freeway hum had already started. At home, I made pancakes for Eve. Not the regular round kind. I use her toy tea set to size them. Her favorite ones fit perfectly in her pink saucer, and I always flip them twice for the crisp edges. She came out of her room in her unicorn pajamas and blinked at the light like a kitten. "Dad, you smell like lemons and thinking," she said, climbing onto her stool. I smiled. "That's accurate." "Did you dream about the moon again?" she asked. "No," I said, "but I fixed something bent." She tilted her head. "Like my bike tire?" "Kind of," I said, "but bigger, and with numbers." She nodded like that made perfect sense, then started pouring syrup like it was medicine for pancakes. I didn't tell her I'd touched $1 million problem without permission. I didn't tell her I might have just put a spotlight on my back. I just watched her eat and listened to the sound of her being alive. That's my anchor. Small plates, clean fixes, quiet mornings. Later, I found my gloves still damp in the bag and threw them out. Something about the way they felt made my stomach turn. I wrote one more thing in my notebook before sleeping. No one saw, but the system knows. Later that day, I was swapping liner bags in the lobby, trying to beat the lunch spill rush, when a woman's voice said my name like it mattered. "Thomas Bennett?" I turned. She stood straight, tablet tucked under her arm, hair pulled back clean. Her eyes were sharp but not mean. I knew who she was without needing the badge. "Yes," I said. She held up a single sheet of paper, not waving it, just enough for me to see the boxes and timestamps. "Door camera shows your badge at 2:32 in the morning. The board changed at 2:39. You didn't touch the laptops. Our logs confirm that." People were walking past us with coffee cups and backpacks. No one slowed down. That helped. I answered what was true. I erased a corner and drew a boundary. It's obvious once you see it. She watched my face like she was checking for static. Then she nodded once. "Come with me." We walked fast. She didn't ask questions on the way. I didn't volunteer extras. The elevator ride was quiet except for the hum and a man coughing behind us. When the doors opened, she stepped out first, like she owned the floor, which she did. In the war room, Russell Jackson stood by the big screen with his hands locked behind his back. His shoulders were tight, like he was bracing for impact. Preston Griffin sat at the far end of the table, legs crossed, wearing a smile that looked polished but thin. I recognized it from the hallways. He'd already done the all-hands at noon. I wasn't invited. Irene didn't introduce me. She didn't need to. She handed me a marker and pointed at the whiteboard. Walk us through just the part you changed. Just the part. I liked that. I stepped up. My hand steadied as soon as the marker touched the board. I drew the line again, same place as last night. Then I drew the slope feeding into it. You can't load a dolly faster by pretending a curb isn't there, I said. Put the curb in the model. It stops the slide. I spoke the way I talk to warehouse folks, not the way people talk in conference rooms. I didn't look at Preston. I didn't look at Russell. I looked at the line. Preston leaned forward. We've tested a dozen. Irene lifted her palm without turning. Let him finish. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The room went quiet like someone had cut the power. I finished in under 2 minutes. I didn't add polish. I didn't defend myself. I just showed how the load hits the edge, how the rate settles instead of spiking, how the mess disappears if you respect the boundary. Russell finally spoke. What does it do to field accuracy? Irene tapped her tablet before I could answer. I ran it against last week's runs, almost 50% more stable. The midnight spike shrinks hard. She looked up at Russell. I checked right after I saw the camera hit. Later that evening, she showed me the internal report in her office. Clean charts, timestamps, no drama. She had access to everything: test stations, logs, field data. The chief operating officer title meant doors opened. Back in the war room, people stopped blinking. I could feel it, like the air got thick. Preston leaned back and folded his arms. Boundaries are cute on a napkin, but they choke performance. I answered without heat. They prevent crashes. That was it. No argument, no edge, just a fact. Russell stared at the board for a long time, long enough that my shoulders started to ache. Then he said, "Ship this to the South City trial site tonight." No vote, no discussion, just a call. As we walked out, Irene matched my pace. "I'll give you temporary access to the test system and the records," she said, low enough that no one else could hear. "You'll work nights as you do. We'll do it right." I nodded. I didn't thank her. Gratitude comes later for me, after the job is real. She handed me a badge update and a printed access sheet. Paper. I liked that. "If anyone asks," she added, "you're here because the work holds." Preston brushed past us near the door. He didn't look at me. His smile was gone. By the time I got back to my cart, my phone buzzed. New access confirmations. 3 of them. I saved the messages and put the phone back without opening anything else. That evening, after Eve was asleep, Irene showed me the test report again in her office. She didn't hover. She let me read. I traced the lines with my finger, slow, checking for tricks. There weren't any. "This is solid," she said. "Not praise. Assessment." I nodded. "It matches the floor." When I left, the building felt different, like it knew my name now. I didn't like that part, but I could handle it. Back in the janitor's closet, I opened my notebook and added a new line under the old ones. "Access granted. Night work starts now." I closed the notebook, locked the door, and rolled my cart toward the elevator, already planning the first test run. By the end of my second shift with test access, people had stopped saying, "Hey." Even the ones who used to nod by the vending machines now stared straight ahead like I wasn't there. The hallway got colder, not literally, but in the way people stepped to the side instead of making room. That kind of silence is deliberate, not angry, surgical. The 2 engineers who used to talk baseball with me near the loading dock, Mike and Tasha, started riding the freight elevator even when they had nothing to carry. I caught one glance between them when I stepped in. They both got out 2 floors early. The meeting invites disappeared, even the ones that used to come automatically. My name stopped showing on shared agendas, and when I checked the project calendar, I saw my slot grayed out. Meetings I was supposedly part of, already done. I dropped one comment in the team chat. Boundary behavior matches field load after midnight. Logs attached. No reply. An hour later, my inbox stayed at 0. I checked the server permissions, thinking maybe my account had been cut off. It hadn't. It was worse than that. I still had access. They just chose not to see me. Late that night, Irene sent a message straight to my personal line. Temporary access to the work files granted. Records here. Don't reply in the main channel. She knew I don't do voice calls unless I have to. I don't like the gaps and guessing. Text is cleaner. Her next message came a minute later. 2 image files, both camera stills. First one time-stamped 3:12 in the morning, the second at 4:27 in the morning. 2 different people, both with high-level access, had gone into the war room and rolled back the red boundary I'd drawn. Same section, same spot. Her message under the photos. After the fact source, the security records. No extra commentary, no blame, just proof. That helped. The next night, I was at the South San Francisco hub for a live pilot. Big warehouse, heavy concrete, rows of belts and chutes like arteries. I wore my orange vest and signed the 1-page waiver Irene had pre-cleared. No press, no observers, just work. Just after midnight, the load hit hard. Holiday returns, multiple carriers, mixed box sizes. The belts picked up a slight chatter as the weight increased. Then something beautiful happened. Instead of jumping, the flow dipped, just a little, then leveled. No stutter, no jam, no box spray. The guardrail held like a shoreline against high tide. A foreman named Lyle walked over, holding a clipboard. He didn't shake my hand, just slapped my shoulder and said, "Whatever you did, do more of it." Then he logged the time and temperature with a grease pencil and walked off. I stood by the panel for 2 more hours, logging run stats on my own tablet. Smooth curves, nothing forced. At home later that morning, Eve sat at the kitchen table with her apple slices and said, "What's a pilot? Like a plane?" I told her, "It's like testing your bike brakes on the hill behind the school." She blinked once. "So don't die." I nodded. "Correct." She handed me her napkin folded into a triangle and said it was a "Don't Die" flag. I taped it inside my locker at the hub that same night. The next morning, around mid-morning, I was rinsing my thermos at the break room sink on the 11th floor when I saw Preston's reflection in the steel backsplash. He was standing close enough to smell my soap. "Stay in your lane," he said, voice low. "Stop drawing on my boards." I didn't turn around. "I clean them. Sometimes I fix them." He stepped a little closer. I could feel his breath now. "You won't be here long enough to fix anything." I dried my hands, walked past him, and pulled out my notebook in the janitor's closet. I wrote it all down, word for word, with the time, just like always. Note, Preston, stay in your lane, stop drawing, won't be here long enough. Facts only. Emotion just clouds the page. That afternoon, I pulled the latest field logs. Someone had quietly tried to run Preston's config again at the Fremont test point. The same boost I'd seen them apply before. No guardrail, just raw speed. The belt jittered for 9 minutes, then dropped throughput by 16%. I copied the run ID, saved it to my archive, and marked it for Irene. Nothing dramatic, just another small fracture recorded before it turned into a crack. Early that evening, she replied. Noted. Lyle confirmed guardrail still active at hub. Fremont test isolated. She didn't ask me to fix it. She knew I already had. That night, I passed a group of junior engineers near the front atrium. They went quiet mid-sentence when they saw me, like I'd walked in wearing a hazmat suit. One of them, I think his name was Rami, muttered something about custodial creep. I kept walking. I logged that too. At home, Eve asked if I wanted to help sort her puzzle pieces. I said I had to finish notes. She said, "Work never ends when you work at night." I told her she was wiser than most grown-ups. She nodded and said, "But I still want pancakes tomorrow. Tiny ones." I wrote that in my notebook, too. Irene met me in a small conference room off the loading bay, the kind with scuffed chairs and a crooked clock no one fixes. She didn't close the door all the way. She slid her tablet across the table and turned it so I could read. The change records were clean and ugly at the same time. Midnight entries, names, times, switches flipped back. One name stood out because it showed up twice, exact spacing, like a habit. "Pavel Orlov," I said. "Senior staff. Preston's group." She nodded once. "He replaced your guardrail with a boost. The logs match the camera badge taps." I stared at the timestamps. I don't like guessing, but I like patterns. This one was clear. She didn't make a speech. She didn't soften it. "You're not imagining the isolation," she said. "We'll keep facts." That helped. Facts are rails. Without them, everything slides. 2 nights in a row after that, the numbers dipped. Same hours. Same smell of hot rubber in the hub. With the rollback in place, the belt jammed twice. The second jam came with noise you could hear through concrete. Later that night, Lyle texted me a video. The frame shook as he panned. Boxes were raining like hail, bouncing and splitting open, shoes and jackets spilling like a busted piñata. Someone swore off camera. The belt screamed and then went quiet. I saved the video. I saved the timestamps. I put them in the folder Irene had set up for me and labeled it with the date written out. Neat. I sent Russell 3 lines, just facts. Guardrail removed. Jams returned. Proof attached. He wrote back 1 line. Noted. That was it. No follow-up, no call, no question. I stared at the word until it stopped looking like a word. Later that morning, I ran into Preston by the freight elevator. Not a crowd, not witnesses. Just the echo of the shaft and the smell of oil. He stepped into my space like it belonged to him. "You think you're a folk hero?" he said. His voice was low and clean, like he practiced it. "You're a night cleaner. They'll forget you." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't step back. "I'm a widower who needs a stable schedule and health insurance for my daughter. I won't play games." His smile flattened. He leaned in closer, close enough that I could see the tiny crack in one tooth, then lose gracefully. I stood still like a post. He wanted a reaction. He didn't get one. The elevator dinged behind us. He stepped away and let the doors close between us like a curtain. That afternoon, I sat in the janitor's closet and typed my resignation letter. 1 paragraph. No anger. No apologies. Dates written out. Last day listed as a week from now, which made it 7 days after the first whiteboard change. That felt clean. I read it twice. I checked the spelling. I put it in the human resources inbox and watched the sent confirmation appear. Then I closed my laptop and wiped the shelf where it had been sitting. I texted Irene 1 line. "I'm out," she replied a minute later. "I understand. I'm not done." Then another message came through, a photo attached. Eve's doodle. The one she'd taped to the janitor's closet shelf last week because she wanted me to bring work home. A blue line across a page, 3 stick figures holding it up. "Keep this," Irene wrote. I stared at the photo until my chest loosened a notch. I cleared my locker. Not fast, not slow. Gloves, notebook, spare thermos lid. I took the blue line drawing and folded it once, then again, and slid it into my notebook so it wouldn't crease wrong. At home that evening, Eve was still in her school shirt. She looked up when I came in early, eyes wide like she was checking the clock in her head. "We're home already?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She didn't ask why. She walked over to the fridge and pulled off a sticker she'd been saving, yellow with crooked letters. She pressed it into my hand. It said, "Good try." I laughed. It surprised me. It came out loud and sharp and real. I hadn't done that in weeks. We ate leftovers and watched a show with too many laugh tracks. She leaned against my side and fell asleep halfway through. I carried her to bed and tucked the blanket the way Ingrid used to, tight at the corners. That night I slept 8 hours in a row, straight through, no dreams I could remember. When I woke up, my hands were shaking anyway. I sat at the kitchen table and waited for them to stop. They did, eventually. I wrote the time in my notebook when they did. I like knowing when things end. I didn't go back to the building that day. I took Eve to school and walked the long way home, past the corner store and the bus stop where people complain about nothing. I made pancakes even though it wasn't our day for them. Small circles, edges crisp. I checked my phone once. No messages. That was fine. Before noon, I took the resignation copy I'd printed and put it in a folder with my other papers. I labeled it and slid it into the drawer under Ingrid's old scarf. Order matters when the ground moves. In the afternoon, I sat on the couch and watched dust float in the light. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was done. When Eve got home, she asked if we were still getting pancakes tomorrow. I told her yes. She nodded like the world made sense again and went to do her homework. I opened my notebook and wrote one last line for the day. Walked out clean. Then I closed it and stood up, already moving toward the sink to wash my hands. I was folding laundry at the kitchen table when the knock came. Just 2 knocks, quick, not loud. I glanced at the clock. It was early Tuesday evening. Eve beat me to the door. She pulled it open like she was expecting a neighbor. "Are you from the building?" she asked. A pause. "Worse," said the man outside. "I'm from the company." She laughed, light and sharp, like it caught her off guard. That kind of laugh breaks tension in a room even when you don't know it's there. I came up behind her and saw him clearly. Gray hoodie, no suit. Tennis shoes, not polished leather. Russell Jackson, CEO of Kestrel Quantics, standing on my doormat with his hands in his pockets like he didn't know what to do with them. "Can I come in?" he asked. I nodded once and stepped aside. He looked around my apartment like he was trying not to judge anything. Puzzle pieces half sorted on the rug. A second-hand couch with one armrest sagging. Ingrid's photo on the fridge, still held up by the magnet that says "Best Day Ever," chipped at the edge. He didn't comment. He just looked. "We failed you," he said. "I failed you. I want to fix that." I didn't ask what took him so long. I didn't ask if he came up with that line in the elevator. I just listened. He stood near the table but didn't sit until I nodded again. He took the folding chair across from me, legs wide like he'd done this part before. I spoke first. "I'll say my rules now so I don't forget them later." He raised his eyebrows slightly but nodded for me to go ahead. "Nights only. Clear scope. No team politics. No open plan desks. And I don't talk to investors." He didn't flinch. "Understood. And no performance reviews written in marketing speak," I added. That one made him smile. Not a big one, but real. While he talked, something about how Irene had shown him the degradation logs. My phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. I let it ring twice before picking up. I don't usually answer those, but something told me to. A woman's voice. "Thomas Bennett? This is Jen from Arborist Robotics in Oakland. One of our ops leads used to work with Lyle. Your name came up. Would you have time this week to talk?" She listed the details. Senior role, 168,000 base salary, nights optional, full benefits, flexible scope, team size negotiable. I told her the truth. "I just had someone from my current company sit down in my kitchen. Let me finish that conversation, and I'll get back to you." She laughed. "Fair enough. You have my number." I hung up and turned back to Russell. He didn't ask who it was. He didn't try to guess. "You should consider that," he said, "but I'd like a chance to make Kestrel right." That mattered more than if he'd fought for me. He didn't try to win. He offered. Eve slid a drawing across the table right then. She must have been sitting nearby with her crayons, waiting for the right moment. 3 stick figures, me, her, and someone in a suit, with a bright blue line running between us like a bridge. "That's the guardrail," she said. Russell stared at it for a second, then let out a laugh that didn't sound like any I'd ever heard from him in a hallway or video clip. This one was surprised, unplanned. "She drew that last week," I said. "Taped it to the closet wall at work." He nodded. "She's sharp." I nodded too. "She is." I told him I'd think about it. I asked him to leave the proposal in writing. No paper, no deal. He stood to go. No handshake, no pitch. Before he left, he looked around once more. "I know this wasn't the life you planned," he said, "but I've seen what you've built from it. That counts." I didn't answer. I didn't have a response that wouldn't sound like a line. After he left, I didn't sit back down right away. My hands weren't shaking. I noticed that first. My hands, still. No tremor, no sweat. I opened the fridge for a bottle of water and stared at Ingrid's photo while I drank half of it standing up. That meant something. After Eve went to bed, I opened my notebook. I added one line at the top of a fresh page. "Tuesday evening, offer, gray hoodie, no pressure." Then I took out the folded drawing and flattened it next to the page. Blue line, 3 stick figures, no labels, no job titles, just balance. Irene had said once, "Quiet facts beat loud drama." I hadn't believed it then, not fully. But now I had the facts. The system slipped without the fix. The proof was in numbers and boxes and belt crashes, not opinions. That night I didn't decide. I just sat with the options. Arborist offered escape. Kestrel offered return. But only one of them knocked on my door. Mid-morning, the call came. 1 ring before voicemail. Irene didn't waste time. "Senior scientific consultant," she said. "Night schedule. Direct access to the project records, the test room, and Pier 94. No team politics. You report to me." I let the words settle. I liked them. Night. Records. No politics. She kept going. "We'll keep receipts and let them speak." I grabbed my notebook from the coffee table and wrote it down before I even answered. "Say that last part again," I said. She did. Same calm tone. I underlined it twice. I asked, "What about Preston?" She didn't flinch. "He'll try to control the stage. I'll moderate the stage." That was enough. She didn't try to sell the offer harder than that. She didn't need to. That evening, just before 6, she knocked on the door holding a puzzle box with a map of the bay. Little fairies, lots of edges. Eve opened the door again, like she was the official gatekeeper now. "You're the puzzle lady," Eve said. "I remember." "I am," Irene said. "This one's hard." They clicked fast, like magnets. Eve spread out the puzzle pieces on the rug, sorting edge pieces the way Ingrid used to teach her. "Dad is good at edges but bad at small talk," she told Irene, like it was just part of the weather. Irene smiled. "Edges keep the whole picture together." I watched them for a few minutes before stepping into the kitchen to read the contract. 2 printed pages, clean, direct. Salary wasn't the headline. Structure was. No dotted lines, no vague performance goals. Just a scope, a chain of access, and a time window I could live with. I signed it and slid the copy into the drawer under my work badge. I texted Irene 1 word. Signed. Then I called Arboris. Told them the truth. I chose a role that fits my routine. Not just the money, the shape of the work. The woman on the other end said, "That makes sense. Doors open for 90 days. No hard feelings." I appreciated that. I wrote down the 90-day mark just in case. It helps to know where exits are even if you don't take them. That night, Russell added 1 more line to my official letter before it went in the system. Mandate to prefer simple, proven solutions. That line mattered more than the title. Flashy systems make me nervous. I like strong, quiet things that don't need to be explained twice. My name showed up in the company directory by late evening. I checked it once, closed the tab, and didn't go back. Preston didn't email me congratulations. That was fine. The following morning, I packed my thermos like I used to, filled it with black coffee, tight-lidded. Same travel mug Ingrid bought from the corner store 7 winters ago when Eve was still in footy pajamas. I took the same route, 18 minutes walking, 12 on the bus. I played the same playlist, no lyrics, just steady beats. Keeps the inside of my head from echoing too much. I entered through the side gate at Pier 94 just before midnight. The guard checked my new badge and said, "Welcome back, man." I nodded once and said, "Good to be back." Inside, the concrete still smelled like rubber and sea air. The belts were quiet but ready. Lights overhead gave off that blue-white glow that flattens everything, but I didn't mind. I like flat when I'm working. No shadows to guess at. Shortly before the pilot started, Irene texted, "I'll stay off the floor so you can think. I'll be on call. You're not alone." That line got to me more than I expected. I didn't answer right away. I reread it twice, then slid the phone into my pocket. I spent the next hour checking every panel, every threshold marker, every config flag. I walked the line twice and made sure the boundary was still there. My red line, curved the right way, logged and locked. Just after midnight, the run began. I stood beside the flow sensors with my thermos and breathed steady. Quiet system, clean motion, no drift. At one point, I caught myself watching the belts instead of the screen. That's how I know I trust the numbers again, when I don't have to stare at them. When the run ended, I logged every outcome. Eve's folded napkin, the "Don't Die" flag, was still tucked inside my locker. I tapped it once like a checkpoint and closed the door. Later that morning, back at the apartment, Eve pointed at the puzzle on the rug and said, "We still have a missing piece." I said, "That's normal." She shrugged. "It's always the last piece that's under the couch." I wrote that down too. The air inside Pier 94 was thick with heat and the layered smell of rubber, salt, and metal dust. 2 nights before the 19th field test, just past midnight, the first full run hit the belts. Heavy mix, returns from 3 vendors, irregular box sizes, overflow from late trucks. Perfect stress test. I had the sensor logs open on one screen, backup displays on another. The guardrail held steady for the first 40 minutes. Rate dipped once under a sharp cluster, then self-corrected clean. That kind of behavior tells you a system's alive, not faking it. Then the spike came. It wasn't random. I could tell by the slope. Clean acceleration, then sharp dip, like someone yanked a rope at full speed. Not natural. I'd seen that signature before. Same false slope, same tight surge. My gut locked before my eyes finished reading it. Someone had pushed a boost from Central. I radioed the booth, thumb firm on the button. "Control, this is Bennett. Roll back the last push. Do it now." There was static, then the voice of the floor operator. "We don't show any push on our end. Nothing logged here." That was worse. That meant whoever did it had higher access than the ops console. The belts started to chatter again, just barely, like the hum of a tired machine before it gives up. I pulled up the hidden configs by hand, slow and methodical to avoid fat fingers. Then I heard a voice behind me. Quiet, nervous. "Check for horizon polish." I turned. A junior engineer I'd seen maybe twice in the hallway. Nate Morales. Shoulders slumped, eyes on the ground like he didn't want to be there. "I don't want trouble," he said. "But that switch? It's back on. It was off 2 days ago." He didn't have to say who put it there. I nodded and went back to the terminal. I typed each command deliberately. I found the background job. Same fingerprint. Same owner ID Preston used last time. I dropped it into safe mode. Then I copied the log entries into my archive and took a screenshot. Proof in pixels. Seconds later, the belt smoothed out like an exhale you can hear. The overload released. Boxes stayed in lane. No bounce, no spray. I called Irene. She picked up on the second ring. Sabotage or vanity? I asked. Her answer came without pause. Doesn't matter tonight. Keep the floor safe. I'm capturing logs. That was a COO voice. Calm, no wasted words. I hung up. Lyle, the foreman, jogged up from the West Bay. I waved him to the console and gave it to him plain. Someone turned the dial past the safe mark to make the system look faster. It looks fast, then it breaks. He spat into a rag and nodded. We'll take safe every time. He logged the rollback on his clipboard, underlined the hour, circled the zone. Real paper. I liked that. Nate was still standing near the breaker panel like he didn't want anyone to see him. I emailed Irene, he said, voice low. From my personal account. I'm tired of getting yelled at for asking why. I looked at him a second longer than I usually hold eye contact. Thanks, I said. It came out stiffer than I meant it, but honest. He gave one nod and left by the side door, fast and quiet, like he didn't want to meddle. Just escape. Around 2 a.m, I got a text from one of the floor supervisors. No jams since 12:30. Whatever you did, keep it. I took a picture of the message and another of the belt itself, running clean. I saved both. Before dawn, I stepped into the apartment and smelled syrup. Eve had set out a plate of crackers and taped a sticky note to my chair. Dad, don't forget your blue line. I peeled the note off and held it for a second. No speech, just color and memory, and a daughter who gets it better than most adults I know. I slid it into my notebook between the sensor printouts and the last page I'd used. Then I washed my hands, drank a glass of water, and let the day roll off. I didn't know who else might try to override me next, but that line held tonight, and so did I. The investor event was held in one of those hotel ballrooms on Market Street. Round tables, thin carpet, and coffee that smelled better than it tasted. They gave me a name tag that said Thomas Bennett, consultant, then tried to seat me second row. I was fine with that until Irene walked up, touched my arm and said, "You'll answer technical. Come up when I wave." I nodded. No one else spoke to me. Preston went first. Gray blazer, white shirt, confident as always. His slides were glossy, lots of gradients and arrows that went nowhere. He repeated the same buzzword 6 times in 4 minutes. I counted. Counting helps me stay grounded when rooms get loud. He talked about scale, vision, and next-gen harmonics. I didn't know what half of it meant, and I'm pretty sure neither did the people nodding. Words that sound smart tend to do that. Irene stepped up next. She wore dark navy, not black, and her posture did most of the work. She didn't oversell it. "This is the person who made our system safe at speed," she said, then stepped aside and let me take the stage. That phrase felt right in my head. Safe first, then speed. That's how things survive. I walked to the mic. No script. Just one idea I knew I could explain without tripping over it. "You don't win a race by tearing off the guardrail," I said. "You finish by staying on the road." I pointed to the screen, a static diagram of the distribution belt, simple lines. "Imagine a crowded dock," I said. "Workers, forklifts, boxes stacked wrong. You don't go faster by ripping out the speed governor. You respect the edge. You stop the spills." Some people nodded. I saw one investor lean in. I stopped there. No extra points for talking long. Irene picked it up smooth. A partner asked about operating margin, and she turned my guardrail into steady flow and translated the stability numbers into percentages that landed better than my notebook ever could. Then came Q&A. Preston took the mic before anyone called on him. He smiled wide, leaned toward the crowd like he was just being helpful. "What if the simple safety line collapses at real scale?" he said. Then he clicked his tablet. The screen behind me jumped. It was a live demo. He had re-enabled Horizon Polish again. No announcement. Just flicked it on and let the chart wobble. The slope spiked, then dipped, then climbed too fast. Like someone faking a limp to win sympathy. I didn't move at first. Irene didn't blink. But I saw it. Same pattern as Pier 94. This wasn't chance. This was sabotage dressed up as curiosity. I held out my hand. "Let me use the podium laptop," I said. Preston didn't offer it. Irene walked over and handed it to me herself. I opened the control panel and said into the mic, "Give me 90 seconds." The mic started to hiss. Then it cut out completely. The room went dead quiet. Good. I typed slow. Found the hidden switch. Same config. Same ID. I disabled it, saved the change, then pointed to the screen behind me. The curve settled. The lines smoothed. No spikes. No fakes. When the mic came back to life, I didn't say much. "That was a fancy paint job," I said. "Paint doesn't hold up under weather." A few people laughed. Not loud, but real. Russell didn't laugh. He looked at Preston like a man working hard to avoid making a permanent mistake in front of a crowd. Irene stepped up and closed the session. "Simple solutions scale because they survive nights and holidays," she said. "Our pilot at Pier 94 ran 4 hours without a jam after the guardrail." That line landed. Because it was true. After the applause, not much, but enough, I walked off stage and stood by the wall while the suits shook hands. One man I didn't know, gray coat, firm handshake, tried to give me a business card. I didn't reach for it. Russell saw it happen. He didn't interrupt. He just watched. Later, he said to me in the hallway, "Values before titles." I didn't answer. I kept the card, slid it into my wallet behind the bus pass I don't use anymore. I never liked public events. Still don't. But that one I walked away from steady. The next morning, they packed the atrium with folding chairs and cold light. I stood at the edge, near the back rail, because edges are easier. My name was already on the screen when I got there. Big letters, full title. No hiding. Russell walked up to the mic with no slides, no notes, just a white card in his hand he never looked at. He said, "We let complexity talk us into ignoring people who see clearly. That stops now." Then he said my name. Thomas Bennett, Senior Scientific Consultant, restored stability to a system that lost its balance. His role is permanent. And effective today, we adopt his mandate. Prefer simple, proven fixes. Document everything. No one clapped yet. Not because they didn't agree, but because they were listening. Hard. Irene stepped forward, clipboard in hand. Her shoes echoed once on the floor, then stopped. "New protocol review rules," she said. "No shadow jobs, no vanity pushes, no overnight changes without owner sign-off. Every deployment must leave a trail." She didn't look at Preston when she said it. She didn't have to. The whole room knew. For the record, the field test on the 19th ran clean for 8 hours. Throughput was up 18%. 0 jams. We posted the report before noon. Russell turned and looked at Preston, then stepped back. "Preston," he said, flat. "Say something." The room went still. No coughs, no shifting chairs. It felt like standing in a cold garage, watching someone try to start a dead engine. Preston stepped forward. Same jacket, no smile. He looked toward the floor and said, "I apologize to Thomas Bennett and to the ops teams who paid for my pride." His voice didn't shake, but it wasn't sharp either. Just small. That's what stayed with me. How small he sounded. A few people clapped. Not loud. Just enough. I nodded once. That's enough. I wasn't after revenge. Revenge is messy. Boundaries are clean. That night, back in my apartment, I was washing the thermos when I heard the knock. Eve opened the door like she always did now. "You brought sushi!" she yelled over her shoulder. Irene stepped in carrying a brown paper bag and a flat puzzle box. She dropped her coat over the couch and sat cross-legged on the rug like she'd done it 100 times. "This one's the Golden Gate Bridge," she said. 2,000 pieces. Metallic edges. Eve dumped the box out with both hands. "We always start with the edge pieces," she said. "Dad taught me that." Irene smiled. "Edges keep us safe." They talked while I cleaned the counter and wiped down the fridge handle twice. Same as always. I didn't rush to join. I watched first. Later, when Eve was focused on sorting, Irene looked up at me and said, "We don't have to talk about dating tonight." I nodded. Good. I don't know how to. "Let's talk about schedules," she said, "and which rooms you're comfortable in." I nodded again. "And that I sometimes miss jokes." She smiled, slow. "I'll help translate the room when you need it." I didn't say thank you out loud, but my shoulders dropped an inch. She saw it. Around 9, I opened my notebook to a new page and wrote one line in pen. "I am not broken. I am built a certain way." That sentence had sat in my head for years, like a broken part. It didn't feel broken anymore, just labeled correctly. Autism isn't a sentence, it's instructions, and I follow instructions well. Before bed, Eve taped her blue guardrail drawing to the fridge again, a little crooked. I left it that way. Then I took Ingrid's photo, her holding Eve in front of the old apartment, and slid it back into its frame where it belonged. I whispered, "We're okay. Not perfect, not fixed, just okay. And that's enough for now. Before you scroll on, let me throw something real at you. Have you ever had to walk away from something broken just to come back and fix it on your own terms? If this story hit you, please tap the hype button to help it reach someone else who needs it. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and like. It's just one click, but it means the world to us. Drop a comment too, even just good story, or tell us where it hit home for you. Thanks for being here.